Nevada's cultural heritage is known worldwide, and it's as varied as our bright neon cities and rugged wilderness landscapes. Every week, the Nevada Department of Cultural Affairs brings a piece of that heritage to your living rooms through our documentary series, Exploring Nevada. I'm producer and host Gwen Clancy. Welcome to the colorful world of cultural affairs. In August of 2007, the History Channel funded Our Story, Inc., a Truckee Meadows nonprofit, to work in association with Sierra Nevada Community Access Television in training local high school students to produce television programs about the African American experience in northern Nevada. Under the direction of Dalton and Shayne Cohen, a wealth of video was molded into short documentaries. We'll show you excerpts from these programs, but first we'll take you behind the scenes to see how these young producers pulled this off.
Learning about the African American history in Reno, in northern Nevada, because I never, in elementary school and middle school and high school, you don't really hear about history in northern Nevada. You hear about it down south where everything was big happening, so it's cool to learn about what's happening here.
I think there's a lot of black history to be told. There's not enough tape in the camera for us to give you the list of all the stuff that we found just ourselves, and we're sure they're going to find a lot more.
They learned about cameras, and they learned about archives all around the state and where to go for what material.
You're doing the detective work on this.
Elmer Rusko was a political science professor at the university and wrote extensively on 19th century African American history. And his collection, he passed away, I want to say, what, 2-3 years ago?
2-3 years ago. Right?
His collection of records, which is all the material that he used in his research, and he wrote a book called Good Times Coming, is housed at the Nevada Historical Society.
One team went to the Nevada Historical Society. Another team headed to Carson City, to the Nevada State Library and Archives.
We're focusing on the political history of African Americans in Nevada.
I'm having trouble reading. I can't really read cursive.
Right here?
Yeah.
I think it says, but the legislature.
But the legislature has no more right to designate a class by the color of the skin than by the color of the hair.
Some even discovered things about their own families.
My great-grandfather.
Great-grandfather.
Says here, founded December 18th, 1955 by Reverend Arthur Roberts.
And they found out it wasn't always easy.
People say they have better things to do, but they don't understand what's really important, and that's knowing stuff about your own state.
One student went to extraordinary lengths to get his interview.
The head coach of the Nevada Wolfpack, right? Yeah. And trying to get to him, I tried jumping over a railing, which had a 15-foot drop after it. So I didn't know it was such a big drop, and I fell and broke my humerus. I got a lot of footage, though. I got pretty good footage, and thanks to breaking my arm, I'm setting up an interview with Chris Alt.
And then the time came to edit.
Well, my project's on Black Springs, and it's hard. I have a lot of footage, and I just don't know what to do with it. I don't know how to put it together and make this work.
It's really stressful because I'm not really sure how to work the program, so it's just really stressful.
But despite the challenges and various learning curves, these determined students turned out products they could be proud of. And now we present excerpts from the 3 group projects.
I was focusing on the political history of Nevada and our story, and I found that at the end I'm more excited about it than I was getting into it. This school in northwest Reno is a testament to a political legacy. 100 years ago, Bernice Martin Matthews would not have been allowed to attend the school that is named after her today. This program will look at the political history of African Americans in Nevada and the evolution of change that allowed this school to be named after a local hero. When the Nevada Constitution was written in 1864, black Americans were specifically prohibited from voting. Article 2 of the 1864 Constitution called for white male citizens to serve as electors within the new state. After some debate, the issues of separate schools for children of African descent was left out of this Constitution, but addressed later by the legislature. Schools were to be segregated along racial lines in an 1865 ordinance until a 1872 decision of the Nevada Supreme Court that forced the state to allow non-whites into public schools where no separate school had been established for Negroes, Mongolians, and Indians. Today we find the idea of segregated schools a foreign way of thinking, but in the 1800s it was not so uncommon. In Nevada, African Americans have never been a strong minority, with only 7% living in the state. Most of that population lived in the South, so naturally, that is where the black political power took root. The first real evidence of any black political presence began in the 1800s with the organization of the Colored Republican Club. In a statement issued in 1894, the club said, "We, the Colored Republican Club of Ormsby County, request all colored voters of the state to stand firm by the Republican Party as the best means of bettering their condition in the state at large." We have very little information about black politics in the late 1800s and early 1900s. According to docent Arlene Laffery, the missing information about black politics is no accident.
There's not a lot in the Reno newspapers of the time, or the Territorial Enterprise, or the Gold Hill News, for the simple reason that back in the 1800s, they didn't mention African Americans much, except in a derogatory way if somebody got arrested or whatever. Now in Elmer's book, he uses mostly the two African American newspapers that are out of San Francisco, the Pacific Appeal and the Elevator. They were the ones that picked up all the news about the fire of 1875 and the African Americans that lost property, and they listed the prices and different things. And they also used a lot of social events and different things for people like Sam Wagner, who was a wonderful African-American bootblack that lived up there for many years and died up there. And then there's also the different people that came up there and stayed. So you're not going to find too much except occasionally an obituary on that. They didn't even mention a whole lot for W.A.G. Brown, who had the Boston Saloon up there. Much has been written now, currently, on that. But back in the 1800s, you're not going to find hardly anything at all. But Elmer used exclusively the Pacific Appeal and the Elevator in his book, and you'll find a lot of references on that. And they're pretty much honest, everything that they did have. Unfortunately, we didn't do a lot here in Reno or the Territorial Enterprise for various other reasons.